Welcome to Who We Are. I'm your host, Maya Calaria. Decolonizing the power of narrative, Who We Are centers the voices of the global majority, people who have experienced colonial harm and marginalization. Those who may have lost connection to their cultures, lands, ancestral heritage, food, spiritualities, languages, and much more through colonization, and are now reclaiming their connection to their roots. This is a living archive for stories of struggle, hope, and healing from systems of oppression. It focuses not on what we do, but on who we are, a bridge between the legacy of our ancestors and those who come after us. So let us bear sacred witness to the stories that have silently lived inside our bodies, stories that long to be told and heard. This is who we are. Hi Glecie, thank you so much for coming on Who We Are today. It's so lovely to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. I can't wait to hear your story and to share it with others. And I wanted to start by asking you to introduce yourself and to share a bit more about the people that you come from and the lands that you originate from.
Yes. So my name is Glecie. I am of Philippine ancestry, specifically Western Visayas, part of the Philippines. Our country is made up of thousands of islands. So yes, my ancestry is from the Western Visayas, specifically the island of Panay. My mother is from Iloilo. So language-wise, we speak Hiligaynon or Ilonggo. And then my paternal side, my dad's side, is from the island of Negros, San Carlos City. So they speak more of the Bisaya, Cebuano. And currently, I am on Ohlone Land in San Francisco, California, first generation American born. So my parents immigrated here, and I've been here ever since. So that's part of where my ancestry comes into play and the story of all of that.
And when did your parents come over here?
That is a great question. I did not get that exact date. So it's actually my grandfather who came here first. I want to say probably in the 70s. He was a civilian cook on a Navy ship. So he had been, all around the world, different parts of the United States. And he decided to invite his family over to come to San Francisco. So that started with his daughter, my aunt. And I think, that was probably in the late 70s to early 80s, because I know my mom arrived in around the 80s. And then shortly after, she brought my dad to San Francisco.
Right. Okay. And what kind of things, if anything, got passed down to you in terms of anything from mythology to family stories, recipes, language, food? Did you get the full whack, or were there bits, or was there nothing, which is often the case as well?
Yeah, that's such an interesting question because I feel like it's such a spectrum, right? And especially in terms of identity, it's how Filipino are you, or how whatever American are you kind of thing. I would say I'm pretty content with what was passed on to me, the good parts anyways, some of it, language. I understand and speak the Philippine national language of Tagalog the most and best, just because it's something I heard growing up, because we did have someone in the house who spoke, that language. And then I know Ilonggo or Hiligaynon, which is my mom's language as well. So I understand that. And then my dad's language, I don't understand as much, but I can pick up certain words. So I'm grateful to have that piece. So especially when I travel back home to the Philippines, I have an understanding of what they're saying and can sort of communicate. For me, when I hear people speak that language, who I don't know, and I hear it in public, it makes me feel so at home. So that's the great thing. I learned language. Definitely some cultural practices, just with how my parents being immigrants and like also trying to instill some of that Filipino, I guess, cultural upbringing. So fortunately, unfortunately, some of that was religion. You know, Philippines was colonized by Spain, so Catholicism was something that has been in my family for some time. So that meant over here in America sending me to private Catholic school, kindergarten through eighth grade. So that's another thing that was passed on. What else? Food. We had my aunt in the house with us, and she was the cook in the house and made some of the best foods that I can think of. Like she has one dish. It's called lying. It's like made with taro leaves, and that dish from her like is the only like dish that doesn't compare to anything else I've eaten like when someone else makes it. So that is like a recipe I need to get down because I'm just like there's no way to like just by tasting it alone for me to like recognize them like the process and the love and energy that is poured into this dish to make it taste the way it does, right? What else? Yeah, so I think with some of that cultural upbringing, there's definitely some of like, of course, some of that patriarchal um, tidbit in there. So I have an older brother. We're 5 years apart. So, I'm the younger daughter, and so that meant like, I had stricter rules or whatever compared to my older brother who can go out and do whatever he wanted without being questioned versus me. It was not that way, right? Like I was policed a lot more and some of that was like, when me finally like speaking up for myself or yeah, taking a stand for myself, that was considered disrespectful, right? To speak up for yourself because I definitely got a lot of the, oh, you think because you're how old now that you can talk to me that way from my father? And it's like, I got that shit up until I was like 20, okay? Yeah, so, and that was very, I would say, one of the more toxic things growing up because I learned that at such a young age to like silence myself and not speak up for myself and for it not to be safe to express myself emotionally that when it came to harm from other adults, I didn't speak up on that either. So just a little background story, and this is not, I feel like, not unheard of, especially in general, whether that's like, being a woman or like also in my culture about how hush hush it is, but I'm a survivor of childhood sexual abuse. So that's what I was saying. I was like, I learned how to silence myself even before the abuse happened. So that snowball effect of like me keeping that to myself because the abuse happened and I held that shit to myself for 20 years, basically, because again, I didn't feel safe enough to share that with someone and or like I don't know, like I don't know what I think I knew as a child or why. Yeah, I guess I just didn't feel safe to share it or also like brushed it off too, right? Like tried to minimize what it actually was. And that wasn't until I'd say 2020, during the whole pandemic. They told us to stay inside, and that's literally where I went, like inside of myself. And that was when I really like started to unpack that, that that experience was actually traumatic for me. And that's where like I really started unpacking and like decolonizing, my mind, my body, my spirit, and everything that I grew up like learning to believe about myself and my identity and my culture and what it is to be a Filipino. So, yeah, it's just interesting how all of that ties in, right? Like how culture shifts so much of so much of who we are. And then like learning how to manage and deal with that as like someone who's living outside of their ancestral lands too. Um, yeah, there's definitely grief there, for sure. So,
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah,
thank you.
it's an honor to be able to hold space for that part of your story, and I really can feel how in some ways the culture betrayed you, and in other ways it fed you, and it just makes me emotional, but I understand. And
Yeah.
yeah, and so it's very complex, and that patriarchal element, and how you had to silence yourself before it had even happened, and whew, that's huge. And I mean, feel free to answer as much of this as you feel comfortable with, or not at all, but did you share that with your family? And if so, how did that go?
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh, it was a whole thing. Yeah, so 2020 was when like I finally admitted to myself that it was traumatic to me, cuz yeah, up until that time I had just been pushing it off, telling myself that I was able to get through school okay, like I have a career now. I didn't develop any mental illness, diagnosed or whatever anyways. So, and then yeah, 2020 up until 2021, I had been like doing the healing work to unpack that. Seeing different like life coaches. I did energy work, like Reiki and talk therapy, to help heal through that. And I think there was a point where I was like, "Oh, I'm doing fine." Like it didn't feel as necessary to tell my parents until like yeah, eventually like basically spirit or universe like slapped me out of nowhere and was like, no, like you have to tell them, and it's not necessarily for them, right? It's for me.
Yeah.
And my healing and allowing myself to be seen and heard regardless of how it's perceived, because that was obviously, or yeah, their reaction or non-reaction is like what I was scared of the most, because I'm like, would it hurt me more? All the different scenarios. I'm like, would they believe me? Like, whatever kind of thing. So eventually I worked up the courage to share with them. This was in 2022. And I mean, ultimately, I'll just say, like, I'm content with how it ended. My dad in general is, yeah, very uncomfortable with, like, difficult conversations and stuff like that. Like, we were just, like, at the kitchen table. I was with my partner at the time. My brother was there. And then my parents, and, like, yeah, I made it a whole thing where I was like, oh, like, I have something to share. And, yeah, and then I had shared it, and then, like, there was like a book or something on the kitchen table that my dad was like flipping through as I was like sharing this, and I was like, you know what, like I'm not even gonna like feel any type of way about it. That's how he processes it, because he's so uncomfortable. There was definitely like the question, oh, why don't you tell us sooner, that kind of thing. And then yeah, my mom, you know or she told me that she like loved me, and so yeah, that was it. It wasn't like a whole big thing. Again, it was like more for my release, my somatic release, like to actually voice that again, especially because I was silenced, right? Like the whole energetics of like finally releasing that was what I needed. And so, yeah, that was that. We haven't talked about it since.
Classic Asian.
Exactly. It was just like, yeah, it was done and over with, which I'm fine with. Like, I don't really need to bring it up either. So, yeah, they know now. And then, yeah, just even sharing that just like started a whole new like initiation for me of like becoming, this person who is able to feel seen and heard. And how I'm able to show up today and like speak and share my story.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So, yeah, thank you for allowing me to share my voice and story. Because I also know it's not my story alone, right? It's the story of so many other people. So,
And you sharing this today is going to mean a lot for people who are listening, especially those from the Filipino community and perhaps
oh yeah.
other Southeast Asian and South Asian and East Asian communities who and beyond. A lot of global majority cultures through colonization
Absolutely.
became so patriarchalized. I don't even know the word, but like that, I feel like what you've shared is such a sadly common story amongst global majority people, and the silence around it and the religion aspect of it as well. And I wanted to ask you about that because I have had another guest on the show who mentioned, in fact, two who have Filipino ancestry, who have mentioned Catholicism and how the Spanish brought that. And
Mhm.
I wanted to ask you what your journey has been like with that, because there's just so much there.
Yeah. Ooh, I'm like, where do I begin? Again, it again like comes back to 2020. So that like year was such a, well, for everyone, right? Like we were all collectively going through a lot. I don't know if it's into astrology or for the astrology people, 2020 is also the year of my Saturn return. So around the time we turn like 30s, and that's like almost like the first midlife crisis that we have, where like we question everything, right? Like we question our career or relationships, everything basically. And so along with that, that's when I started to learn more about my ancestry. And so part of that was working with like a Visayan priestess, like a Filipino shaman. And actually, before I got in touch with her, I was seeking it, right? Like I wanted support, whether it was like, I don't know, a spiritual like healer or a talk therapist. And initially, it was only met like with people who didn't look like me, and I personally felt like with what I was experiencing, I something with ancestry needed to be there. And so of course, like universe led me to her. I don't think I went into it having any expectations, just because I was like, I have no idea what to expect. I've never done anything like this. Again, my upbringing was very like Catholic, religious. I'm also in healthcare as a nurse, so the mysticism or spiritual aspect isn't like so linear, right? But whatever, like I knew it was something that I needed to experience. And from that journey is literally like what connected me to my ancestors, these spiritual, divine beings who I am a descendant of, who I have a connection with, or who I learned I can have and build a connection with, even though they're not on this physical plane, which is again different from my Catholic upbringing, right? Like we're only taught to talk to God, Jesus, saints, yet we have a whole team like who is our blood, that we can ask for support from. And also it's like what we're experiencing in our lifetime isn't just ours, in terms of whatever the general generational patterns, the unhelpful patterns that we're experiencing in this lifetime aren't just ours, right? They're theirs, like, and we have the honor and privilege in this lifetime to break those patterns. And so it's like, why can't we ask them for help, right? Like, so yeah, that was 2020 when I learned of my connection to my ancestors. And altar building is something that is huge for me in my practice. Altars I grew up with, again, because of the church. But what was different about this time around was it's an ancestral altar. Actually, that has always existed in general in my house. Having photos of like deceased loved ones and stuff like that. But this time around, like the fact that I created it myself rather than like the family doing it, like felt very special to me, and like is a place that I go to when I want to worship, right? When I want support, or when I have a favor, or sometimes I just cry at my altar because that is the only thing I can offer at that moment. And yeah, I forgot the original question. Like, am I still on track?
You are still on track, and it was about Catholicism, but
Okay.
it ties in beautifully because this is the kind of remedy to
Yeah.
Catholicism.
Exactly. Yeah, so connection to my ancestors, spirit, universe, God, whatever I want to call, or like, yeah, basically my perception of God is very different now compared to my Catholic upbringing. In one of our ancestral practices, pre-colonization, was animism, and that is where we, view life in all things. The trees, the plants, the elements, like even some inanimate objects. And so that has definitely shifted, like, again, my perception of God. Like, I see God in everything, and all the different synchronicities and all the different people that I meet and all the different connections that I make, and also in my connection and reverence for the land too. The land that I come from and the land that I currently live on too, right? Because again, as someone who's born outside of their ancestral lands, like, it's so important that we honor the lands that we currently live on. So that is how, yeah, I've decolonized, I guess, my practice of relating to, I don't know, to everything really.
Yeah, everything,
Yeah,
life itself.
exactly.
Wow. And I very much relate as well. And I'm sure, once again, so many people listening will relate because the Christianization that was spread through colonization was brutal, harsh, relentless, and is still going on, especially in the Philippines, and many other places, such as Africa.
Yeah.
So it's still going on. And I wanted to ask you, actually, just kind of going back a bit, do you know at all how, apart from Catholicism, how your ancestors or family members were impacted by colonization?
Mm. I'm like, where do I take this?
Wherever you want.
Oh gosh. I'll say I'll start off by saying with the land in terms of, like, I'm here in America, right? I'm not on my ancestral lands, which is all the things. It's beautiful, it's heartbreaking. Yeah, I'll start there because especially my last visit to the Philippines in February of this year, I'd say, and I had been to the Philippines how many times before, but this trip was very much like a homecoming for me because the previous times I had been there, I didn't have a connection to ancestors and spirit and land. And so this last trip it was like a homecoming. It was an initiation because one, a single adult, again with this newfound connection to spirit, ancestors, and land, and it was beautiful being back home and, like, seeing family because most of my family is actually in the Philippines. I don't have as much family out here, immediate family, anyways. But when I was back there, like, I also very much felt grief, right? Like, this is how I could be living in close proximity to family, like hearing our ancestral languages, hearing or eating our ancestral foods, which, like, it's wild. I can eat white rice out there every day and, like, not feel all the, like, symptoms that I would hear of, like, the bloating and the whatever indigestion. And I think it goes to show of, like, the life force in the food that's grown out there because the produce doesn't, like, travel far, or just like how, or in America anyways, like, or how our farming is, and just the abuse of the land and, like, the all the chemicals and all that thing. So yeah, it took land away from us and separated us obviously from our land, right? And that was, like, very intentional on their part. Like, they made it so that the land that we were living in the Philippines is one inhabitable, and or just the exploitation, like, that is just wild to me. And Philippine politics is not something, like, I'm too keen on, but they very much draw from Western and American oppressive systems, basically, because yeah, people can't afford to live out there. Like, they can't make money, right? And so many of them work overseas. I think I've heard that like the biggest import in the Philippines is the workers, basically, overseas workers, right? And it's like it's so sad that people like aren't with their family half the year because they have to like go make money, which still sometimes isn't even enough. And then it's interesting too. I'm like, technically, my parents are like overseas workers too, right? So yeah, there's just this cycle of like people having to leave their home country to find better opportunities. And those better opportunities are technically to serve the empire. And then yeah, that was all intentional too, and it's just this cycle. And so yeah, that's definitely something I'm wanting to shift to, right? And like I don't want to be separate from my ancestral lands, and like so I'm um calling it in where and or just being intentional with wanting to spend more time there. Because I also feel like yeah, when I'm there, just like my connection to spirit and ancestors in the land is like that much stronger when I'm on my ancestral lands versus like here.
Yeah, beautifully said. And you've covered a lot just in that answer, but in such a kind of eloquent way. So thank you for that, because it's this idea of a better life, but that better life is serving empire. Who decides what is better? And the level of
Oh
like
my gosh, I say that all the time.
do you?
Yeah, or just it's funny because I'm like, or me and my family are one of the only families in our immediate family who are here in America, and like not to talk shit, but like I have cousins and like aunts and uncles out there who like don't work and like just rely on my parents sending them money. I'm like, why couldn't that be honest?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. It's yeah, there's so many nuance there, but I don't know. It's a privilege and what's the other word? Privilege and curse all at the same time. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, everyone I've spoken to so far has kind of given a similar kind of impression, but
Yeah.
and I feel the same. It's like there are so many privileges we all have, but at the same time we're not living on our motherland, and there is so much grief there and so much fragmentation and so much erasure
Absolutely.
that we can't fully reverse, but we can heal in different ways.
Yeah.
And I wanted to, before we go into like more ways in which you've been healing from these
Yeah.
systems of oppression, I wanted to just step back a little bit and just to ask you out of interest, how did it come to your consciousness that colonization had happened? Because I think for all of us, we all had a different moment. And for me, it was like this night and day instant moment where my life was just changed. It wasn't a gradual thing, but for some people it was this gradual realization. How was it for you?
Yeah. Again, I would say it was the ancestral journey that happened in 2020 because when going through that process of like even preparing for the journey or just again the journey in general, like in Catholicism, like it was considered like evil, demonic, or like witchcraft to talk to anyone other than God, Jesus, or the saints. And so yeah, I'd say that it's like how is me talking to my ancestors, like my direct lineage, my blood? Yeah, how is that evil? And so I think that was the main thing. I was like, for so long I think that's where it finally clicked to me. I was like, yeah, like Spain colonized the Philippines, like intently like erased our ancestral practices, our healing rituals, and deemed that as like whatever, witchcraft, like evil, demonic. And yeah, I don't know, for some reason I was like, that's not true. Like I'm like, or like if that was true, like why did you have to, yeah, or it made me question why it was evil when like they're the one who came to our islands and colonized us and like were violent, caused violence and like harm on us when we're just like minding our own damn business. Like we were fine without you. you
Yeah.
know? And yeah, I don't know. It's just something clicked in me. I was like, no, that's not right. Like, yeah, I think it was a knowing and a feeling in my body, a remembrance, a reclamation that, yeah, the connection to myself, to my ancestors, and my direct connection to God is what it is, not what someone tells me it is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And did that coincide with, so 2020 was when actually I had my racial awakening, and so did many other people, because George Floyd's murder kind of was this massive turning point. I know that there'd been like so many murders that were very, very similar, not in exactly the same way, but you know, it wasn't a
Right.
first for the Black community, but for some
Yeah.
reason, consciousness had reached a stage collectively where that was the tipping point for so many of us. And that's when, for
Mhm.
me, that absolute, like, I went to bed one day and I woke up the next day and I was like a different person, like literally. And I remember that week, you know, and
Wow.
it was that
Yeah.
exact week. But I find it so fascinating when I hear your story, because it sounds like it really tied into that collective consciousness awakening as well, because it was that year when so many of us had our own
Absolutely.
unique kind of thread.
Yeah.
And it's wild because you and I are on different sides, you know, different parts of the world, but we both had that in that year that just turned our lives
Yeah.
around in different ways. And like, look at us having this conversation now, you know,
Exactly.
it's just so
Or
wild.
just when you were describing that, I was like, I got the chills.
Yeah, it's incredible. It is, and but so fucking tragic. You know,
Yeah.
so tragic in so many ways, but yet so beautiful in so many ways. Because one of the things about colonization, one of the only things that I can think of that has actually been a byproduct that has been quite beautiful, is that we all get to connect in this way, whereas we may not have
Absolutely.
before. But the basis on which we connect is not the ideal, not the ideal topic,
Yeah.
but it is as it is, right? And this is where we're at right now, and it won't
Exactly.
always be like this.
Yeah. Right.
So I wanted to go back to the healing part, and you have mentioned the spiritual aspect of it, but what are the other ways in which you reclaimed yourself, your
Mhm.
being, your spirit, your culture, your power?
Yeah. Ooh. So I'd say a big part of that is what I do in my work, what my calling is. So I go by the Bastos Bruja on Instagram, which translates to the nasty witch. Bastos is Bastos and Bruja are yeah, Tagalog or Philippine language words, but that is has ultimately been like a reclamation and remembrance for me and an ode to my indigenous ancestors. I like to say Bastos is indigenous. And the reason I use that word is because how I live my life right now as a single, childless, sensually and erotically expressive human being is ultimately like some of the ways my indigenous ancestors lived, right? But again, colonization and religion took that away from us, and like whatever the sex with marriage, after marriage kind of thing. I don't have to go into that, but we know how
We do, sadly, yeah.
the church, took away basically our pleasure, right? The experience to feel pleasure in our body on our terms. So yeah, so it's present in the work that I do as, or again, I call myself the Bastos Bruja. And what I do is I'm a sensuality priestess, and ultimately I help women, femmes connect to their sensual expression, and I do it in my offering is called Sensual Simbahan. Simbahan means church,
Yes.
so sensual church. Um, yeah, and ultimately it's a space that I've created to worship and devote to ourselves, our ancestors, in the land, in a way that we weren't able to before. I always say, because my work is very much matriarchal led versus the patriarchal church of Catholicism. Yeah, so it's very matriarchal led, and I like to say this ain't your Lola's church. Lola means grandma in the Philippine language. But yeah, I say this ain't your Lola's church, but it's the one that she prayed for, right? It's a space where where she could feel seen and heard, where she can dress however she wanted to, she can express herself however she wanted to, without everyone else telling her how she should worship, or who she should worship, right? It's us centering ourselves, us centering our bodies, us centering our sensuality and our erotic expression, because that's our life force right there, right? It's our connection to God, and so yeah, I would say it's alive in the work that I do, and again, I think me being single and childless at this age, I'm in my mid-30s, is, well, one, I'm the first in my family to have arrived at this age, single and childless, and I very much think that it's an ancestral was an ancestral initiation or a gift, because by this age, everyone in my family has been married for 10 plus years with at least one kid already. And like when I think about my Lola, my grandma, she had her own 4 kids that she raised, and then she helped raise her 12 grandchildren. This is off one child alone, so this is not including like the other cousins.
Oh my gosh.
And so that's why I'm always like, no fucking wonder I'm single and childless at this age, because she just was born to raise children, and raise children while her husband, my grandfather, was in another country with another woman, living his own life.
Of course.
This is the grandpa who is here in America. I mean, granted, he was sending money to the Philippines, and I have yet to unpack that conversation with my parents. I'm like, so grandpa was here with another woman, and was grandma like okay with that, or like she didn't really have a choice or say because she was getting the money regardless? Anyways, so I very much like laugh and think about it, that I'm like, oh, that's why I'm single and childless at this age, because my Lola said, F them kids and F these men. So yeah, I do still want at least one child and a husband. And I will say that with that too, like when choosing a partner and or a husband, that it's going to be the best husband that anyone in my paternal line or masculine ancestry has ever seen.
Yes.
Because that's a pattern that needs to be broken too, right? Like, and me separating from a long-term relationship 2 years ago was part of that journey. We were basically like married. We were together for almost 9 years, right? And I think the fact that we didn't get married and or have kids is very telling.
Right.
So,
yeah,
it's just interesting how it's all connected.
It really is. As you speak, I can just see it all. It's so connected. It is so divinely guided. Everything has happened for a reason and led you to this and what you do and how you do it. And, I think about female sexual energy, feminine sexual energy that runs through femmes and women and, actually all kinds of people, right?
Yes.
And I think about how that has been mined and extracted and exploited and siphoned and abused through colonization and the unholy trifecta of patriarchy, capitalism, colonialism, and how reclaiming our feminine sexual energy is just such a huge part of healing, because that is kind of what feeds, it's harvested, that's what kind of like feeds everything. They need that, right? They need it. That's why we're so oppressed. That's why we're so controlled, because it's such a powerful, powerful force. And they know that, but they convince us that it's evil, that it's bad, it's unholy. And actually it's the opposite. It's the exact opposite. Mm-hmm. And white Jesus.
Exactly.
Don't even get me started. So it's like, I love it because it's such a huge part of decolonizing, learning how to reclaim your sensuality without shame. And if there is shame, working with that and being gentle with that and knowing that that's not from you.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
That is an external force, right?
Yeah. Exactly. Yes, I like to say, a connection, or what I've learned through like my work and what I now offer is just our connection to our sensuality is sacred, not shameful or not sinful like the church has led us to believe, right? And to me, being a central person is being cohesive in our body, right? It's not the compartmentalization of our body, our mind, and our spirit. It's like that's what I aim to create in these central simbahans. It's like we can show up with all of us, our body, our mind, our spirit, and our connection to ancestors and especially the land, and it's all connected. Like I like to say animism is central because I see again life and God and everything, and like God and life or everything just, and that's I feel like true Eros living, like everything like turns me on basically, right?
Yeah.
And again, because that's just our life force moving through us, and so it gets to be exciting when you are embodied in your body that way, that you get to feel and experience life much more rich and fully, unapologetically, and also obviously safety is the first and primary thing that like comes up, and it has been something, especially as a survivor, that I've had to work through, right? And like you mentioned, shame. That's been a big journey, and I know that is why part of that is me claiming the title Bastos Bruja, the nasty witch, because it's like I am nasty or whatever, and like I claim that because like you can't shame me for what I know about myself, kind of thing. So that's part of it, the reclamation and remembrance.
Yeah. And also, I think about the word nasty and like how many different meanings that can have, because like what they think is nasty and what you're reclaiming as nasty are two different things. And I love that. It's like you're reclaiming the word and making it your meaning rather than what they decided. And also, I just want to say, like, the amount of SA that happened within the Catholic Church, and yet this is the legacy that they've left behind, this legacy of shame within people when they were the blueprint,
right,
for abuse, and it just astounds me, like the level of brainwashing and gaslighting around that still happens now, like hundreds of years later. So it angers me, but that's another conversation.
I know. It really can be. But it's like, why should we feel shame? Like, shame on you, like shame on them, like.
Exactly. It's reversal. It's a reversal that's going on, and it's sacred. It really is justice, sacred justice.
Yeah. And that reminds me of a quote from, I think she's a French survivor where her husband, like, I don't know if you have heard of that story, but I forget her name, but basically she said shame has to switch sides.
Yeah.
And I was like, that.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. So, I mean, I could talk to you for hours.
I know.
But
really,
there's just so much. It's just like, there's just so much. But I will end on this question, which I would love to hear your answer to, which is, what kind of world would you like to leave behind for our descendants? And when I say descendants, I mean, obviously not just if we have, I mean, because I'm also child-free and, for those of us who may or may not have children, but even just those who come after us in generations to come, what kind of world would you like to help create? And what are you actively helping to create for them?
Oh, I'm like, how big? I'm like, where do I start? I'll just say, we'll go with this, that I would like to, I am creating a world where we live in reverence to the land, to the people, to everything, really, the plants, the animals, where we live in reciprocity with the land and each other, where there doesn't need to be billionaires that exist in this world, that everyone can eat and live and be merry and be well and be whole in mind, body, and spirit, where they get to practice, whatever religion or spirituality that they believe in that doesn't oppress someone else, in a world where there aren't borders. Yeah. I feel like that's all I'll say for now. I'm like, I can, yes. I'm like, there's a whole picture to be painted. Yeah, there's a whole picture to be painted. I can say so much more, but just to wrap it up there, I feel like that, like, cohesively is a world that I would love, or, again, that I am hopefully contributing to, so that, yeah, ideally the generations after me, whether it comes from myself or just in general, that people get to experience that, because it's time. It's been time, or like, yeah, and we're moving there, and I think that's also why everything is falling apart.
It has to,
exactly.
right?
It has to. Everything has to fall apart for this new world and earth to begin.
Yeah. And I can categorically say that you are a huge part of creating
Thank
that
you.
with what you do. And it's just, yeah, it's beautiful and it's needed, and it's creating space for others to do the same. It's trailblazing, especially coming from the community that you come from. It's like, it is the dream of the ancestors,
Yeah.
right? And yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you for doing that.
Thank you for sharing the space to be able to do that. Yeah, ancestors orchestrated this today, right?
100%.
I remember you saying this is just like an archive of us sharing our stories, and it's so important that we share our stories, and that thankfully we're able to across like different time zones, and it's just, yeah, distance and time obviously is nothing when it comes to like human connection like this, and like we just met on social media and like had a quick conversation, and like now here we are like
crying
and like yeah, just I feel touched and held. Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, it is an honor. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing your ancestor stories, your story. I honestly guarantee that those listening will be as moved as I was, and as inspired as I was as well. And yeah, just thank you so much.
Thank you.